When your niche is so clear of your service, your who you serve and what you serve them with, that outshines so much need for code switching because they're like, this person is the person we need. They're so specific. We have to have them.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. Let's go get that corporate money, shall we? A lot of Rebel Therapist participants and listeners like you are brilliant folks who feel intimidated by the idea of consulting with organizations, and yet they have the gifts those organizations need. You have the gifts those organizations need. It's part of my mission to get you, especially those of you who are queer, trans, and or BIPOC, to parachute into organizations, facilitate real change, make a lot of money, and not lose yourself. If you want in on this exploration, make sure you listen to the next few episodes. I am so excited to start us off with Femily. As a gender cultural studies MA with a big firm management consulting background, Femily speaks at and advises Silicon Valley and other male majority sectors and teams like law, finance, and engineering on gender equity and building an ally culture. Femily's popular digital courses give ambitious women and non-binary people concrete, evidence-based instruction on leading in today's male-majority world, rebelling against disempowering shoulds, outsmarting all isms, and making big life business changes that really stick. Welcome, Femily. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. I really appreciate you.
In the beginning, we're going to first talk about getting these gigs. What worked for you in the very beginning to get corporate gigs?
I love this question because this is frankly the most confusing part, and I had to figure it out by doing all the wrong things first. So what actually ended up working in the end was knowing someone. That's not going to surprise you, but I had a friend and we were both trying to get corporate gigs for different things. And we would just elevate the heck out of each other online and in person, networking, going to events together, introducing each other to people. And she got her husband to bring me into his company. It was that. It was nothing. It wasn't advertising. It wasn't all the other things you think might work. It wasn't a stranger. It was a very warm contact.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how does it usually happen for you?
It is totally different now. Now that the snowball is snowballing and people know me for being someone who helps companies, I get strangers calling me. And they basically see my name in print or hear me on a podcast or used to work at a company that brought me in, and then they bring me in. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. I like how you put that, the snowball, once the snowball's rolling, and it's like, that's really where a lot of my listeners and participants are at, is like still getting that particular snowball rolling. So
it's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. In that in-between time, between like that first warm contact and now, how much reaching out were you doing and how much pitching yourself were you doing and like asking for introductions and doing proactive stuff like that?
Okay. So to be clear, those first ones that I got through people that I know, those did not snowball. Those just paid the bills so I could keep doing this job. And learn more, right? By being in there and learning more about companies and getting better at it. Then with that knowledge, I put myself out there as a thought leader who knew I help companies with gender and orientation. So that's my example. Obviously it doesn't have to be yours, but once I started talking to companies about it, then I would go on podcasts and talk about it. I would write on LinkedIn about it. I would put useful information on my social media platforms of Instagram and LinkedIn. I wiggled my way into networks of people who were doing similar things to mine and became a recognized thought leader in this area. And I use that not big T, big L, not cover of Time magazine, but just sort of a micro niche thought leader. And so I wasn't pitching I wasn't reaching out and pitching. I didn't put any energy into that. It was about my personal and professional reputation as someone who knew how to do this work and could do it.
Wow. Okay. So you focused on building your thought leadership and putting it out there in these different places more than actually directly pitching to orgs.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the main things that I have seen work for folks, much more so than reaching out to companies. But we can talk about direct outreach to companies too, because that is something that works when you want to pay the bills. It's just not something that starts that snowball going where then strangers are calling you.
So we could almost think of it as like phase 1.
Yes.
Phase 2. Interesting. Because I just interviewed, it won't have played yet, but I just interviewed Kristen Meinzer, who does consulting around podcasting. And it was her book about starting a podcast that got those orgs contacting her and bringing on the full snowball.
Yes. And for me, it was a lot of speaking engagements, being on a panel, being a moderator of events that were related to this, or that would have those kinds of people in the audience who would be like, oh gosh, we need to bring someone into our company to talk about this.
Mm. And were there times that you directly, so in the beginning, were there times where you were directly pitching? And who would you pitch to? Would it be to HR or?
No. This is the thing that exhausts people the most, is trying to find a stranger in a company to listen to you. Honestly, I feel like you should just think this will never happen. It's as much like, it's just like the lottery. Sure, someone wins the lottery, but it's a similar odds, in my opinion, that a stranger within a company is going to ever talk to you and then hire you.
You would look for warm leads then, is that right?
Yeah, I would do two things. What I suggest to people who want to get into companies is you get really clear about the kind of service that you help companies with, not the kind of service you want to provide companies, like, oh, companies should know more about wellness. No, the kind of service that companies are like, shoot, we have this business problem. Who can help us solve it? Like maybe they're, for the wellness example, businesses are currently like, shoot, we're losing employees that are either this kind of social demographic or a lot of moms or et cetera. And so maybe you have a cure for that that's related to wellness, and you can provide that. But so the first thing is having a service that companies actually already know they need. You also cannot convince a company. This is another lottery odds. You have lottery odds of convincing a company that they need your service if they don't already know that they need it.
Mm-hmm. Like it's got to be on their to-do list.
Yeah.
Because they have a big to-do list already.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And mostly their to-do list is increase our money. And so, especially because I know I'm talking to you, to the Rebel Therapy crowd, and there's a big jump between the sort of helping professions and the corporate mindset. And that can be a big jump because a lot of those of us, I mean, my mom's a therapist, like they're in it for the social care and the helping and the intellectual stimulation of it all, et cetera. And then corporations' mission, even if they're like, we're saving the environment with these shoes we're making from recycled rubber, they're here for money, right? So if you can connect your wellness workshop with money, that's why I'm saying help them with retention, because when you're losing employees, they know that's a money problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Tie it to money.
Yes.
Retention, looking at like I've heard you talk about diversity in terms of what the corporations are now sold on is that diversity leads to money.
Absolutely. Luckily, we now have the research to support that very strongly. There's almost no wavering on that data. And so companies are convinced, if they are already convinced by that they need diversity help, it's because they've either had an incident, which is a different thing, or they have seen the bottom line research and they want to do it, or they're feeling social pressure over the past year. They've been feeling some social pressure, which has sadly died down a bit.
Okay. When you're about to get hired by someone, what kinds of questions, and let's say probably more towards before the snowball, like what kinds of questions would they ask you?
Almost none. I mean, they almost...
Okay.
Surprisingly few for the amount of money that you can get paid to go give a talk at a company if they need that talk. I mean, we're talking, 2,500, 5K, 10K, depending on what you're talking about or what you're helping them with, if it's a workshop. They ask surprisingly few questions because they assume you know what a company like theirs needs. And they're like, when can you be here?
I love it. I love it. And it makes sense. Like sometimes this can be true of, okay, tangent, I may possibly edit out, but this is true of like when we're creating any kind of offer that's relatively low cost, I would say we usually get at least as many questions from potential participants for those, probably more questions than when we're running like a $5,000 program and up. So that's really funny. Okay. So
I've seen that too.
when folks are creating their offer, whether it's going to be a talk or a workshop or like a more of a consulting package, so you do both. You do longer gigs and you also do talks. How does it break down for you in terms of like what percentage of your work is talks as opposed to the longer stuff?
I love that question because it presumes that there's like a steady breakdown and there's not. It's very random. For example, because I talk to companies during Pride Month a lot, I'm real booked in June for one-off talks because everyone wants a Pride speaker.
Isn't that funny? And here we are talking and like, I'm super queer and it didn't even occur to me like we're in Pride Month. So yeah.
Super queer too. I think that's why they're asking me to come talk to them. Yeah. So Pride Month's a big one. Also Women's History Month. I get another chance to help companies. And so I talk to women in tech. I talk to tech companies about women in March. And International Women's Day and Women in Engineering Day, they're all around the same time. So those are big times for me. So that's why my whole thing is you need to niche. So if you are a rebel therapist trying to get into a company, what is your niche? Because ideally your niche lines up with things that the companies care about. So if you have a racial niche, you can go right into, I mean, it's problematic that companies only care about these things during the themed months for sure. And also, since they do, let's get in there, right? So if you can niche in terms of any of your race or identity characteristics, that's amazing. Not yours, but the kinds of ways that you help companies and help those segments of the population.
Yeah. And so you don't have a particular pattern of this, but over the year in other months, do you find you're doing more of the longer term packages?
I like to I have a major program that I run outside of tech companies, group coaching program. And that I offer once a year. And there's a big launch period, May, June, March, April, May, June, that whole spring. And then it goes July, August, September. So anyways, that period, I do lighter help. I help companies less, but I usually have 2 or 3 clients that I'm working with. And then outside of that program, because I don't subscribe to the whole hustle culture, I'm not trying to burn myself out doing all these things. I like to have an easeful life of charging what I'm worth, working an amount of hours that allows me to still be present for people if they need a little extra care, or present for companies if they have a little bit of a crisis. And so in the times when most of my year, I like to have 2 or 3 tech clients. And with them, I'm usually working on 1 or 2 projects. And so I know that there's a big idea. There's a big idea people have when they're trying to go from, individual one-on-one coaching or therapy or consulting into corporate is the shoe in the door thing. The shoe in the door works with a personal contact. It does not work with, maybe I'll just give 1 talk and then it'll turn into a series of consulting gigs. That does not really work because people either see you in general, in my whole 5 years of doing this, in my 10 years of doing management consulting before that on different topics, they either see you as a flashy, fun keynote speaker to pop in once and dazzle everyone and hopefully change some hearts and minds, or they see you as someone who can get in the trenches with them and dig through the work of the company and help them in that way, whether it's advisory, just talking, or consulting, hands-on, clunking through the data, et cetera. They don't really see you as both people.
Oh, that's so great. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So really you can think about which way you want to position yourself.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You just saved people some time.
Yeah.
Big way.
Yeah.
Okay, so you gave an example once of setting up a package with a large organization. I think this one was about gender neutral restrooms.
Mm-hmm.
That was 15K and then 300 an hour after that.
Mm-hmm.
In an example like that, what helps you land on 15K?
Yeah. So this was helping a company create a guide for what to do when colleagues come out as ready to transition on the workplace and or as non-binary. Very different things for folks for each community, but it was to give colleagues that if a colleague came out to them. It was to give managers so managers knew what to do and how to help the person. It was to give HR this so they would know what to do in the system and how to help the person from the administrative point of view. And one of those things included the recommendation that they have gender-free bathrooms.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's the flashy thing that people think about. So yes. So the 15K, when I make a project, I think, how many hours is this going to take me? And obviously at the beginning of being one of these consultants, it's real hard to know, right? And as a woman in the patriarchy, I undersold myself all the time. And I did all this free work because I was like, oh, shoot, maybe a smarter man consultant would do this better and faster. I should write off all this time. So, but now that I'm in it and I've been here for a while, I just have a greater sense of what is this project going to take me in terms of hours. And I just do hourly because I build into it's 400 an hour now. My hourly rate, it's not 400 an hour because it's going to take me 60 minutes and it's 400 an hour for 60 minutes. It's 400 an hour for the fact that I've been on this earth for 43 years doing these kinds of work and having these kinds of experiences and reading this kind of literature and moving the needle in these kinds of ways for these kinds of companies for 43 years or for however long I've been in the industry, right? And so that's what my rate is. And so I calculate how long is this thing going to take me, and including prep, including calls, including postmortems, including research on my end. And I calculate it together into a sum. And then if there are pieces of the puzzle that we haven't defined yet, the client often isn't quite sure of some things. I say anything after this 15K for however many hours, we're clicking into the hourly rate and we just keep going. So I say it's for example, 15K for this many hours, and I track the hours. And once those are finished, then we start doing hourly.
Beautiful. Why are you not charging 500 an hour?
I mean, money is just a made up thing, and we just all just yell a price out into the ethers. And so, any one of these things, it's just people just say, like, is your speech worth $750 or is it worth 17K? Like, if you say it and the company pays it, then it's worth that, right? So I feel comfortable with 400 an hour. At one point I did a assessment of, how much money it would be if I charged this much and had these many clients and paid the taxes and paid my dental and went on vacation so I didn't burn out. And it somehow came out around this price and I felt good about it. I also benchmarked it with other consultants in the field. I have a mentor who is a straight white male from Stanford and from McKinsey. And so I thought, I'm going to benchmark myself against him and pretend there's no sexism in this world or isms against the college he went to or didn't go to, et cetera. And so I benchmarked against what he's charging and is able to charge and what companies have paid for him. And so that's how I got here.
Okay. And the reason I picked on you about 500 was I saw you saying at one point, like, that you would give the ballpark of at least 500 per hour with large corporations. And so then that stood out to me.
Yeah. You know why I said that? That was in this YouTube video it was like 101, how to become a consultant, I think. And I say that because I'm trying to shock my audience.
Yes.
Because I know women and I have a huge audience of POCs and queer and trans folks. And every single person with marginalized identities has been told, you need to undersell yourself. You are worth less. And so say I'm glad you asked this. I say that because when they come to me offline individually, they say, I'm going to get this corporate client. Should I charge 110? Is that too much? 110 an hour, right? So those are the prices people are thinking, especially if we're talking to therapists here, which I know we are. The therapist hourly rate is generally not 500 an hour for doing therapy. And so you have to hear a number that's so much more so that you can land on a rate that feels like you could possibly mutter it out loud.
100%. I love it. Okay. In a moment, we'll hear Femily answer some questions from my brilliant Rebel Therapist participants. First, I want to invite you to join me for Create Your Program. This is a 5-week process to expand beyond private practice. You'll go from having an idea or a bunch of ideas to actually launching a pilot program. This is a small group experience where you'll get a lot of brave work done in a supportive group of driven and open-hearted entrepreneurs like you. And this is for you if you're a therapist or a healer and you want to expand your business. Go to rebeltherapist.me/create to learn more. Let's get back to it, and we'll hear Femily answering some questions from Rebel Therapist participants. So I've got some questions, as you know, from my folks, from participants. So we're just going to like rapid fire through some of these.
Yes.
I'm so excited. Okay. So how do you convince rich people that your services are required?
Oh my God, I love it. And so rich people are companies, I assume, right? For this combo.
Yeah. And it's like, I think this person was thinking it's going to be a rich person making the decision for the company. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. They're definitely a rich person making the decision, and they have the wealth of the company behind them. They have in their pocketbook, their company pocketbook. Yes. So I'm just going to start with an unpopular caveat that's going to get your folks to think this through, because first, far too many people want to get the corporate coin because you hear about these numbers that we're throwing back here, and it's incredible. Like, these are large amounts of money. It could allow you to do grand things in your community, your family, et cetera. Like, this is a lot of money for sure. But a lot of people, companies are really sensitive to the fact that a lot of people want to take advantage of companies to make a quick buck, and that they don't really care about the companies or the humans in the companies. And so since companies know this, they're really skeptical about strangers coming in. That's another reason why the warm contact is so important. And so you might get in there once, but as soon as you're oozing that kind of energy of just here for the quick buck, you won't get those referrals that are so common and so necessary for this work. So first, I would say, ask yourself why you want to help companies. Are you someone like myself I'm actually fascinated, as much as I'm anti-capitalist and I would love a socialist world, et cetera, I am right now in this current model fascinated by how these organizations work and change and think, and what happens, especially to marginalized folks within these companies, and what makes them better, what makes companies better. You can ask yourself, are you in love with a certain industry, right? And are you feeling passionate about helping them with a thing that you have expertise in? Or is it just the money? The second thing that you have to think about, I know we touched on this a bit, but it's worth repeating. You have to solve an urgent business problem. So a lot of folks in my Future Thought Leader program or in my life come to me and say, I want to pick your brain about how to get corporate clients. I want to take my, for example, ambitious women's moon circle wellness program into companies. I think they could really benefit. And I'm like, first, I want to attend, and I don't even know what it is, but it sounds witchy and great, and like I would love it. And second of all, I think, of course, companies need a lot more witchy, a lot more moon circle, a lot more all of that. However, they're never going to say yes. What they are going to say yes to is if you repackage that, rename it, and say something like a workshop for retaining women leaders through work-life balance skills. Right? They might be like, oh yeah, business thing. We have to retain women leaders. Like, cool. And then it's all witchy in there. Once you get in there, then great. So similarly, I had someone ask me recently, oh, I want to get into companies and help them, like help everyone in a company smash their inner capitalist. And I was like, okay, I also am here for that. But a company is more going to hire you for something like financial ethics confidence course for new managers, right? And like, where you are talking about the same thing, right? You're talking about ethics of how you're using the money and the corporate money, and it's a confidence class and it's middle managers. But the truth here is, you listeners may not want to translate your amazing, quirky, effervescent, rebel therapy knowledge into this bland, corporatized, capitalized way. And that's perfectly fine. You can't get a corporate gig if you don't want to do it, in my opinion. But it's just means it's not the song in your heart if you're barfing inside over thinking about translating your cool ass stuff into corporate speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it's like exciting to think about doing that. I mean, I think to you and I, these puzzles are kind of exciting. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
So I can put these two questions kind of together.
Okay, cool.
So I'll ask both of them. What if you're BIPOC and you feel like you're going to have to prove yourself in impossible ways? And is it necessary to tone down your marginalized identity and or code switch in order to get a corporate gig?
I love this one. Best question ever. Yes, everyone is wondering this, for everyone with a marginalized identity for sure. So here's what's true. Being from a marginalized community means that you haven't been puffed up with all the endless self-esteem that those with zero marginalized identities or even fewer marginalized identities have. So you probably will have some self-esteem issues that might hold you back internally, due to the patriarchy and the hetero patriarchy and the white supremacy. So as much as you can fake it till you make it, if you can have a buddy where you're both faking it till you make it and you're slapping high five about how much you're doing that, then great. Because even when you're faking it till you're making it, that's what all of the whiter, more male, straighter people are doing.
What about the code switching part?
So yeah, this is a good question. So there's two truths here. One, you don't have to code switch when you're trying to get the gig because you're going to be looking for warm contacts who already know you within the company. So those are probably people from your community or who are your allies and with whom you don't have to code switch that much. And so that's why you're going to be looking for a warm contact instead of a cold contact. And once you're in there, so in there giving your talk, it depends. So you're balancing two things. You're balancing your truth against what current companies are looking for. And there's a way in which you may have to code switch a tiny bit for safety and or just so some people who are not from your community can understand what you're talking about. You may have to translate, right? Some of the things that in your head are one way and then you're coming out with another thing. But so many of us overcorrect and end up as robotic sort of Stepford wives or people from a business catalog. And then when you code switch or translate or numb down who you are or turn the volume down on who you authentically are so much, you can't magnetize people into your purpose and into what you're talking about and into your workshop. And so it's a detriment to what you're talking about. The other thing I'll mention here is in companies, when they're hiring you, they're focused on how you can help them. So you're going to need, and more than getting your words exactly right or your persona exactly right, you need to have your I help statement really nails. And so this is what we talk about a lot in my program. So here's what it is. You say, I help, and it's this kind of industry or this kind of worker, do this business need thing like retain employees, et cetera, or build a customer base in China, et cetera, via my offering. What's my offering? Is it a workshop? Is it a 3-month package, et cetera? And so when you niche down, so it's not just I help companies, it should be as specific as I help construction companies in the Midwest retain women via my anti-sexism workshop, right? So when your niche is so clear of your service, your who you serve and what you serve them with, that outshines so much need for code switching because they're like, this person is the person we need. They're so specific. We have to have them.
Oh, I love it. And that's on our to-do list. So there it is. Yeah. Is it okay to swear when you're working with large organizations?
I love this. Okay. So this goes back to the be yourself ethos, right? So obviously the white heteropatriarchy tells us that we all have to be these robotic professionals, but that is playing the man's game. And so you have two options, right? You have the option of playing the man's game and they still might not let you in or like you, because if you're not all of the things that are in the straight white man's game. Or you can let your being yourself energy carry you to the top and magnetize people. I like to give the example of Queer Eye. They don't win over these straight Southern gentlemen by trying to be straight Southern gentlemen themselves. They win them over by being their full spectrum selves. And they also allow themselves. So yeah, it includes, sure, they're gay and some of them one of them is non-binary, but more than that, it includes them being effervescent beings and silly and quirky and weird and amazing and sensitive and vulnerable and all of these 360-degree feelings. So letting that self come in. So back about the swearing. Most people play it so safe that we end up being unmemorable, right?
I love it.
Yeah. So this is more about swearing. It's about code switching, right? Closeting yourself. There's tons of companies out there and everyone right now is trying for those Fortune 500 logos where yes, the culture there is no swearing. The culture there is a suit in a certain color gray for all genders, right? If that's where you want to navigate, go ahead. But better is to have a niche and find a niche that wants the kind of person that you are. So for example, I have a future thought leader client that just left her corporate gig to become an LGBTQAI consultant just for credit unions in the Midwest.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yes. Right. And they're like, yes, we know her. We need her. She understands us. Right. And when I tell companies, I say I help startups get diversity right before there's suddenly 100 white or white and Asian dudes just staring at each other in a room thinking, how do we do diversity? Right. It's very specific what that is. And so another one of my clients helps the plant food industry get more inclusive along the lines of race because it's a pretty white and non-anti-racist community. So the key point here is people want someone who knows their industry. So work on less concern about should I swear or not, and more concern on how can I be helpful to a very niche industry in a very specific part of the world, and play around with a few and see where you feel like you can bring at least some of the magic of who you are to the table.
Beautiful. Yeah. And then you have full access to yourself and you can do so much more with that.
Right.
So, okay, let's say a person is not doing Jedi work, like justice, equity, diversity, inclusion work. If they're under the rainbow umbrella and or BIPOC and or another marginalized identity going on, should they say that, like put that front and center because perhaps these orgs are trying to increase diversity and have that on their to-do list?
If they're going to be a consultant or a speaker at the company?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So again, the warm contact thing means that we're not approaching these people cold. So it's not like you're sending a cold resume. So you don't need to say, I'm a Black lesbian, because the person who you know in engineering or in HR knows you and is bringing you in.
And they may say that if that is something that the company's going to want to know.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. But what I would say about that is you can use your marginalized identity to your advantage by seeking out professional organizations for your identity that are about the niche you're in. And so like I help tech companies with not being so cringy on gender and orientation. So you bet I'm networking my tail off at Lesbians Who Tech. Right. And so there will be organizations where you can find the intersection of your identities and the kind of industry that you want to help.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That was so fun. So anything that stands out to you right now that you're particularly excited about?
In life?
Yeah, in life.
So I run because I got that snowball working for myself where I became a thought leader and then strangers. I mean, this is obviously the dream where strangers will ask you, can you come help us in the way that you are really good at helping, right? And that you're excited about helping. So because people in my communities and clients saw me doing that, they said, how do I become a thought leader? And I was like, well, you can book an hour of my coaching time. And then too many people asked me, and I was like, I can't do this. I got to make a group program. So now I run a group program for feminist and queer people on how to step into that spotlight and get the snowball rolling so that they can really attract the kinds of clients and opportunities that they want to, that basically our whiter, more male, more straight colleagues are used to getting. And so it's all about us. And this is what's exciting me about this. I led 83 people through this program last year. And what I am seeing from people of all colors, queer people, trans people of all kinds and colors coming together to raise their voices in ways they hadn't before, we're moving the needle in so many industries, from fitness to beauty to tech, the whole spectrum. I mean, it's incredible. It's really fun. There's another way of helping companies that specifically therapists might be really good at that we haven't talked about today, which is providing one-on-one, I'll call it coaching or advisory services to one person in the company. So if you have a specialty, I have a friend of mine who is a psychologist. She's a client of mine, and she goes into companies and helps white women and women of color who are having problems in the workplace sort through them in a mediation standpoint. So she does one-on-one talking and helping with them behind closed doors. And then she brings them together in a three-person conversation and helps them get through these times. So there are these sort of human, personal problems in workplaces that therapists are really well suited to come in and help. So if there's a kind of either dispute or personal inner issue, I don't know all the therapy lingo, so please excuse me, but that your folks know how to help folks with, companies, HR people bring in folks all the time to partner with individuals, mostly in leadership, because that's where the money is, to help them through a certain time, such as if someone is grieving something outside of work and they're also still a leader, so someone who's a specialist in grief. I'm helping someone right now who is a male in a male-dominated field, and he's too aggressive towards the women that he works with. So we're having weekly coaching sessions about this. And so I sell a package of 10 conversations at once. They pay up front for 10 times my hourly wage. And then I help the person for 10 times and extend it if we need to. So that could be a very sweet spot for therapists.
Oh my God. Yes. Thank you. And what about newer, like helping newer managers for a period of time who are dealing with like the issues that come up when you're now leading people who used to be your peers?
Oh my gosh, that's great. I love that question. I keep getting asked about that question. It must be in the universe. I think this must be a moment where that is a topic. Yes. Because that's a very strong business problem. And so anything where you're like, if I were a therapist right now trying to figure out how to get into a company, I would be Googling, what are the top 10 business problems in X industry, whatever industry you want to get into, or in companies today, and see which ones attract your interest and your skill set. And then start putting your fake it till you make it shoe forward and approaching your warm contacts and say, hey, Wanda, I don't know if you know, but I've started to help marginalized middle managers break through confidence barriers to make sure that their first 90 days in their role get off to a good start. Do you have anyone I could help? Right. And then just start doing it that way. And the fake it till you make it is on purpose. You can fake it till you make it if you know you could do that well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't fake it till you make it if you don't know how to do it. Like, I would not fake it till I make it. I don't know that much about making companies better for folks who use a chair. I just am not the best person for that job. So I am not who use a wheelchair. I would not pretend to fake it till I make it. That would be harmful. But I'm sure in the early days before I'd had any clients, I was damn sure I could help people get better for women in the workplace. And so I said that. And so the first few clients who hired me did not know that they were my first client.
Yeah. Yeah. And why should they? Yes.
Why should they?
You know you can do it.
I did.
Thank you so much, Femily.
Oh my gosh, Annie, I'm so glad that we got to meet. I'm such an admirer of your work. I love the whole rebel therapist thing. I'm going to listen to all of your podcasts.
Now I'm going to loop back and share some takeaways that particularly stand out to me from this conversation. Takeaway number 1. it's probably going to be a warm contact that gets you in those first few doors. It's not likely to be advertising or cold calling that gets you started.
And she got her husband to bring me into his company. It was that. It was nothing. It wasn't advertising. It wasn't all the other things you think might work. It wasn't a stranger. It was a very warm contact.
Takeaway number 2. Giving a talk does not usually lead to consulting gigs. Position yourself for one or the other.
They either see you as a flashy, fun keynote speaker to pop in once and dazzle everyone and hopefully change some hearts and minds, or they see you as someone who can get in the trenches with them and dig through the work of the company and help them in that way.
Takeaway number 3. Niche hard. Figure out which corporations you're interested in working with and solve one of their urgent problems.
How can I be helpful to a very niche industry in a very specific part of the world?
Takeaway number 4. Therapists and healers are the perfect people to do some highly specialized one-on-one or small group work with corporations.
So there are these sort of human, personal problems in workplaces that therapists are really well suited to come in and help.
Those are 4 of my takeaways. I would love to know what stood out to you. Send me an email at info@coachingwithannie.com, and even better, include a voice memo so I can share your voice on the pod. Tell me what stood out to you from this conversation and what it's helping you to rethink in your own business. You can find out more about Femily at familyonthego.com. I want to thank Cosmo Palms for editing this podcast. If you found this conversation supportive, please share it with your favorite therapist or healer. That is how we reach more people. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time when we talk with another thought leader who's working with organizations. Oh, God.
We're good.
God. Okay.
We're
okay.
good.
So let me go real quick.
Yeah.